This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. For 30 minutes a day, this show is helping me make up for all the years I did things my parents were not proud of. Here's what we got for y'all. President Trump will not be returning to Facebook right away after the company's Oversight board upheld a ban against the former president. We'll touch base with one of our colleagues to get a sense of how that's playing out online and what happens next. Plus, President Biden is hitting the road to talk about his jobs and family plans. We'll tell you how his road show is resonating with Americans. But first, here's what you need to know right now. In the last few days, members of the AAPI community across the country have been victims of attacks, some of them caught on camera. 2 Asian women were stabbed in downtown San Francisco. In New York City, 2 Asian women were attacked with a hammer. And in Baltimore, Asian American shop owners were attacked with a cinder block. We don't want to create an unnecessary culture of fear, but it does highlight how attacks on the AAPI community is still a prevalent issue. A recent study found that in 15 of America's largest cities, attacks on Asians rose by 164% this year. The attacks are thought to stem mainly from misguided anger about the coronavirus pandemic, which originated in China. Unfortunately, even after the national dialogue has tried to help curb these attacks, they've persisted. On Monday, prominent Asian American business leaders launched a $250 million initiative to support AAPI causes by creating the Asian American Foundation. Last month, the Senate also passed a bill which expedites the Justice Department's review of AAPI hate crimes and designates an official department to oversee the effort. It's the most concrete action Congress has taken to address this violence. Former President Donald Trump won't be returning to Facebook, at least for the time being. Today, Facebook's Oversight board ruled to uphold the ban against him and reassess in 6 months. As you can imagine, the move has been met with mixed reactions. To understand more about the Oversight board's decision, Newsy's Tyler Atkinson is here to break things down a bit.
Hi, Christian. Criticisms of the decision have come from all over. Some worry it's an act of censorship, but overnight and into this morning, Twitter users helped get the hashtag #DeleteFacebook trending. The hashtag implored users to delete themselves from the platform in protest of the decision. But the Oversight Board said that Facebook did indeed make the right decision in removing the former president from their platforms amidst the January 6th Capitol insurrection, noting that Trump's unfounded accusations of election fraud did indeed play a role into inciting violence. The board also criticized Facebook for not having clear enough policies around indefinite suspensions, noting that Facebook doesn't currently have a rule about how those indefinite suspensions are given and how long those indefinite suspensions actually are. In its decision, the Oversight Board told Facebook that the company needed to create clear standards for these suspensions and gave the company 6 months to draft new policies and apply them to the former president. That means the president has a chance of getting back on the platform, but one expert I spoke to doesn't think that will happen.
I think it's much more likely that they'll go back and say, Donald Trump abused our platform repeatedly and dangerously, and here are the multiple reasons why we think banning him permanently is appropriate.
The response from the political world has been markedly partisan. Republicans like Senator Marsha Blackburn accused Mark Zuckerberg of being an arbiter of free speech. Democratic Senator Mark Warner praised the decision, but noted that, quote, policymakers ultimately must address the root of these issues, which includes pushing for oversight and effective moderation mechanisms to hold platforms accountable for a business model that spreads real-world harm. Christian, back to you.
So here's a pandemic-related domino effect for you. The National Association of Home Builders say the prices of an average new single-family home is more than $35,000 higher than it normally would be, and it's all because of lumber. Last spring, when the pandemic closed things down, Sawmills shut down its lumber production. It was done because of an expected housing slump that never actually came. Now there's not enough material to meet the demand of new home buyers. That in turn is delaying construction of new homes and slowing down renovations on others. As I understand it, it's not a buyer's market right now. But lumber isn't the only thing seeing a price increase. The Federal Reserve says the shortage of commodities like agriculture products, cleaning products, and microchips are also driving up prices. At this time, the Federal Reserve is viewing the price surge as a temporary byproduct of the pandemic, but we don't want to assume anything because it makes it, well, you know the rest. Over the past few years, we've been inundated with videos of law enforcement deciding to use deadly force on civilians, which has led to calls for reform. While localities across the country grapple with how exactly to address these shootings, one department might have emerged as a model. Newsy's Jamal Andrews tells us how a Department of Justice tool helped make the Newark, New Jersey Police Department one of a kind.
As U.S. police grapple with how to reel in use of force, one local police department managed to go a full year without a shooting or a death, without a single shot fired by officers.
The Newark Police Division is embracing the concepts set forth in the consent decree. I'm not sure that the city of Newark or that the Newark PD could have gotten here without a consent decree, but they are here.
Newark's transformation is perhaps the best argument for widespread adoption of consent decrees, a court-enforceable agreement between local police and the Department of Justice to implement reform.
Today, I am announcing that the Justice Department has opened a civil investigation to determine whether the Minneapolis Police Department into the Louisville, Jefferson County Metro Government and the Louisville Metro Police Department.
Much like where the Minneapolis and Louisville police departments find themselves now, the Newark PD was the subject of a patterns and practices investigation in 2011. The 3-year investigation found vast racial disparities in arrests, widespread corruption, and a long history of excessive force. In 2016, just months before President Obama left office, the city of Newark agreed to a court-enforceable consent decree to overhaul the department. Former New Jersey Attorney General Peter Harvey is the independent monitor in charge of overseeing that agreement.
It takes a while for the inevitability of a consent decree to sink in, but it is inevitable.
Among other things, the consent decree required new policies and training on use of force, searches and seizures, bias-free policing, body cameras, and internal affairs. The department is now preliminarily compliant with 40 different benchmarks among those categories.
There have been people waiting for this because this is who they thought they would be as police officers. They now have something to use to push back on those persons who want to keep things as they are. 0
deaths and no use of a firearm in an entire calendar year was unheard of for the city of Newark before reforms were put in place. In 2016, the city saw a string of 7 police shootings in 7 months that left 5 residents dead.
Should I use force? That becomes the initial question. For Newark PD, they built into the revised use of force guidelines the precept of de-escalation as an initial measure, followed by the decision to use force, and if so, what grade of force.
While Newark reached the milestone in December, the celebration was quickly interrupted. Newark police shot and killed Carl Dorsey just minutes into the new year. The shooting is under investigation by the current New Jersey Attorney General. But Harvey says this incident doesn't take away from the progress made.
What you want police officers to be is to protect the public, to be trained in a way that they make good decisions, knowing that they're not going to be perfect and they are going to make mistakes along the line. What you don't want is intentional criminal conduct like we saw in Minneapolis with Chauvin, with George Floyd.
According to the Newark police, overall crime went down 6% in 2020 as part of a 5-year trend of overall crime decline. Jamal Andrews, Newsy.
When you're back, we'll tell you what's making noise online, and we'll be making even more noise outside very soon. Growing up in the South, I felt like some things were just a part of the environment, you know? Oppressive heat, the smell of biscuits, Confederate flag sightings, and what seemed like a nonstop and unwanted chorus of cicadas. Very soon, parts of the US are gonna sound a little bit like home. Here's what's trending. Honestly, if I was underground for 17 years, I'd want to get active too, if you know what I'm saying. Any day now, trillions of cicadas from the so-called brood 10 will burst up from underground and begin their brief adulthood, which consists of doing a little dance, making a little love, laying some eggs, and then dropping dead. Real rock star stuff right there. Brood 10 will be one of the largest broods and will affect 15 states, mostly in the eastern US and parts of the Midwest. Scientists say that cicadas have been emerging earlier in the year due to climate change. But despite all that, nature is still doing its thing, just noisily. Now, I'm only gonna say this once. What you do with those cicadas once they emerge is your business, okay?
We tried them both ways. Hot sauce is definitely better. All right. Cheers.
Peloton said Wednesday it is recalling hundreds of thousands of treadmills linked to a child's death and 70 other injuries. In a joint announcement with the Consumer Product Safety Commission, Peloton CEO apologized, saying the company made a mistake by not immediately following along with the CPSC's suggestion to recall the Tread Plus, the deluxe version of their treadmill. The recall statement doesn't exactly say what the issue is, just that the treadmills pose serious risks to children who can get sucked underneath the rear roller. Peloton, a company whose bikes have become a major part of at-home quarantine fitness, saw its stock drop after the recall announcement. The CPSC says if you own Peloton's Tread or Tread Plus, to stop using the product immediately and reach out for a full refund. Former President Trump must have had a feeling about how Facebook's Oversight Board was going to rule today. On Tuesday, Trump announced a new Trump-only platform called From the Desk of Donald J. Trump. The new site operates like a blog where Trump can publish his unfettered thoughts and replay some of his greatest hits, like bashing Rhino Mitt Romney and pushing The Big Lie, which kind of got him the boot from the other platforms. And here he doesn't have to stick to a 240 character limit. We know why the platform exists, but Trump has also inexplicably been posting his thoughts here since March 24th, way before most of us probably knew about this. But the official rollout is coming just in time. Two of the most popular social media platforms, Facebook and Twitter, are still upholding their bans against the former president. During his first address to a joint session of Congress, President Biden touted his jobs and family plans, which got claps from congressional Democrats. Now he's hitting the road to sell those plans to the rest of the country. Newsy's Willie James Inman tells us more.
President Biden has been hitting the road to tout his ambitious and pricey proposals focused on infrastructure, childcare, and education.
A once-in-a-generation investment in our families, in our children, that addresses what people care most about and most need.
The president's trip to Louisiana Thursday will be his fourth since last week's joint address to Congress. The Vice President, First Lady, and Second Gentleman have also made and planned a number of stops, each focused on selling the public on nearly $4 trillion in new spending and some tax increases on corporations and wealthier Americans.
We have a huge opportunity here to provide fast, safe, reliable, clean transportation in this country. And transit is part of the infrastructure.
Some of the president's proposals include things like retrofitting transportation infrastructure, expansion of broadband internet access and upgrades for buildings, an extension of key tax credits for families, and providing universal pre-K and free community college. And despite the high price tag, recent polls show the majority of Americans approve of his ideas. 58% of voters support the president's American Families Plan, while a separate poll notes 57% of voters are in favor of Biden's infrastructure bill. But that public approval has yet to translate to the House and Senate Republicans needed to pass the legislation.
I would point out that if you look at all of the president's recent proposals, they total more than $4.1 trillion. That's the amount that we spent to win World War II.
Public polling is done at a national level mostly, not at the state and local level. And of course, members of the House represent districts which may be very different in terms of their preferences than the nation as a whole, states as well.
Still, South Carolina-based Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright thinks the administration's roadshow will put pressure on Republicans whose constituents could benefit from the proposals.
I think the president's approach of going back to the places and reminding people what he did for them, I think is strategic, and I think it's important because at the end of the day, these are what some people view as Republican states, but yet they voted for him.
The White House has indicated that negotiations for the proposed legislation are ongoing, and a meeting between the president and a group of Senate Republicans could take place as early as next week. Willie James Inman, Newsy, Washington.
The US birth rate is declining, and some people say climate change could be a reason behind that. The birth rate in the US has declined for the 6th straight year. Demographers believe the 2020 decline has a lot to do with the pandemic. But there's another factor that could also be playing a role. National reporter Elizabeth Ruiz shows us why climate change concerns have some people rethinking whether they want to start a family.
Bethany Wilcox has always wanted to have kids.
Seeing my parents and how much satisfaction and fulfillment they seemed to have, from raising my sister and I always wanted that. I always thought that was an amazing thing.
It was something she pictured herself doing once she settled down with a partner. She's in that stage of life right now, but the thought of having kids scares her. She says she's afraid climate change would take away her children's ability to live their best life.
I am not confident that that happy future can exist for anyone anymore.
Bethany is not alone in her feelings. Dr. Sabrina Helm, an associate professor at the University of Arizona, has been studying the role climate change plays in reproductive decision-making.
I'm generally very interested in the mental health impacts that climate change has, on people in general, particularly in the United States.
Dr. Helm says overconsumption, overpopulation, and an uncertain future were the three major concerns that emerged in her research.
What is the Earth going to look like? What's the environment going to look like? And if we expose children to this kind of new world, which we all assume might not be as pretty as the world we see today, what does that mean? And is it fair to bring children into a world that might be more bleak?
Dr. Helm says these thoughts are taking a toll on the mental health of adults in the child-rearing stage of life. Bethany says she's often hesitant to share her feelings on the topic because people can be very judgmental.
The anonymity of the internet, makes people terrible sometimes.
There's also a societal pressure to have kids.
In history, the vast majority of history, the main thing that women contributed to society was their ability to have children.
Dr. Helm says many of the people she interviewed in her research said they didn't feel validated in their fears and concerns.
The answer is always, oh, well, you'll change your mind. You'll change your mind. Or, oh, you're going to regret that later. Or oh, who's going to take care of you when you get old?
Bethany says it makes it that much more difficult every time she thinks about having kids.
It's definitely a sad thought to think that I would not be able to have kids. Even if we do decide that we don't want to have a kid of our own, we've talked a lot about adopting, because even if I am questioning whether or not I want to bring a child into the world, I have no qualms about loving one that's already here.
Dr. Helm says a lot of people with these concerns do have hope that their children could be the change makers. She also says there are ways to cope if you are feeling this way.
Just talking with others about what's going on in the environment and trying to find ways to help, be it on a political level, be it on a community level, a grassroots level, all that are ways to proactively make a difference. And that usually also helps with our mental state.
I'm Elizabeth Ruiz reporting.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. If you don't quite know how to use Twitter, it's easy. Just type in that hashtag, think of a super unpopular opinion you might have, type that too, and then just hit send. Everybody does it. President Biden wants 70% of the US population vaccinated by July 4th. But daily vaccine administrations have been slowly declining over the last couple of weeks. Now, states are getting creative to try and encourage people to get a shot by offering things like a free beer or $100 in a savings bond. Uncertain if the fully vaccinated can take advantage of that, which is a bummer. Newsy's Stephanie Sandoval explains why experts think these incentives will be worth it in the long run.
When it comes to getting more COVID shots in arms, it appears state incentives are paying off, quite literally. In Maryland and Detroit, people can get money for getting the shot or driving someone to get a shot.
A lot of people are still scared to take it, so maybe this will help. Some people might want to go do it just because of that.
But since vaccination rates continue to decline, places like Washington, D.C. and New Jersey are finding other creative ways to incentivize vaccinations. Starting Thursday, you can get a shot and a beer at the Kennedy Center in the nation's capital. No appointment necessary.
I think on this scale, it is something that's new. It's unfortunate that it has to come to this.
Companies like Target, Kroger, and Disney World are offering workers cash for shots too. Dr. Amish Adalja, a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, believes incentives will work.
If we can prevent COVID-19 from disrupting our lives, disrupting our economy, these incentives may prove to be worth it.
According to Gallup, about a quarter of Americans are unwilling to get vaccinated, with most citing safety questions. Incentives are being accepted by scientists and politicians as a way to bring the U.S. closer to herd immunity.
It's going to be a daunting task to get to herd immunity, but I think it's really important to remember that although herd immunity is a key milestone, we will see benefits, and we are already seeing benefits from getting our population vaccinated short of that herd immunity threshold.
Stephanie Sandoval, Newsy.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more in the loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.